Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Driving Talk podcast powered by Icon. This is a very special episode. It's an audio-only episode for this one. I've actually got some technical issues with a webcam, so I've very kindly had Patrick Watts accept his invitation to come onto the Driving Talk podcast and talk through a fantastic career. So, good evening, Patrick. It's good to have you on. How are you?
Hi, Rob. I'm great. And with a face like mine, I'm best on talk only. Is this what you're saying?
Not at all, sir. Not at all. I'll tell you what, you've got a face that could light up any room, that's for sure.
Look, I thought we were going to be on the old movies, so I put my Motul t-shirt on. I brushed my hair,
Well, at least you've still got the sponsorship in there, earlier. So you're wearing a Motul t-shirt. We'll make sure that gets put out there. So good lubricants, Motul. I use them on my race car myself for gearbox oil and some other bits. So not a bad brand to have at all.
But it's a safe brand to have.
Absolutely.
You spend enough on motorsport to not scrimp on the oil.
Absolutely, and it's the oil that gets that keeps the car nice and reliable through the engine, the gearbox, all of those good things. It's the oil that probably makes it the most reliable. So, as well as talking through your past commitments, you're actually getting ready to head to Silverstone for the first round of the Mazda Super Cup to support your daughter Amy and Wilbur in the Mazda Super Cups.
Absolutely, yeah.
And it's good fun running those cars. I watched you a lot last year, and it looked like you were having fun doing it.
I really enjoy it. I mean, if Amy was a no-hoper, I'd just walk away. But I'm so excited about it. We had a moment up at Cadwell Park where we tested, and she'd done a certain lap time. I thought, okay, we've screwed on the qualifying tyres, and she's going to go quicker. But she was going slower, and she was letting people past. And I thought, oh, what the fuck, and then she came in. I said, Amy, what are you doing? She said it's stuck in third gear. And a screw had fallen out of the gear change and jammed the gate. So she was stuck in third gear. So, thank God for that. I was relieved that had happened as opposed to disappointed because I still got faith in Amy, we put that screw where it should be and she did well in the race. In fact, I think she overtook Wilbur on that one, which I always use Wilbur as a benchmark because he's really quick. So the fact that Amy can keep up with him round Cadwell is yeah. Anyhow, let's talk about me, not about her.
Well, we are planning on having Amy on a later episode. I might have to doorstep her at one of the Super Cup rounds, come over with a podcast gear and sit down and talk about her career to date. So we'll come to the more modern stuff or the today's stuff soon enough, Patrick, because you've also got the small matter of the Peking to Paris rally to take care of later in the year.
Oh, I have, yeah.
But we're going to go back really to almost the late 70s. I know you said before we started recording that you probably would struggle to remember back that far, but I'm going to, we'll try anyway. Just through my notes and various bits of internet research, your first title came in the late 70s driving Minis.
Yeah, the Mini 850 Challenge. It was... I've always loved Minis. I mean, when the car to have when you were a kid was a Mini. And you aspired to a Mini Cooper S, but they were as hard to insure as a Nissan Skyline is now, or a Subaru Impreza. A Mini Cooper S, well, can't insure that, but I raced the Mini 850. I was 16. I was living 4 miles away from Brands Hatch. Every opportunity, I would cycle up to Brands Hatch and watch the racing, watch the testing, and I just loved the saloon cars. My dad, in fact, was a doctor at Brands Hatch. He officiated as a doctor. So he would drag me and my brother up there, dump us in the main grandstand press box, and he'd go off with his prawn cocktail sandwiches and flask of tomato soup and leave us to watch the racing from the press box. We were, like 10 or 12 years old then. And they had the noisy cars. A guy called Jim Clark and Graham Hill, They were the noisy cigar-shaped cars. Wasn't interested in those. Loved the saloon cars. Loved the minis. Loved the minis. Been up with the Mustangs and I think the Ford Escorts and Hillman Imps were out then. But I loved the saloon car support race to the Grand Prix, um, and therefore a natural thing to do when I grew out of tuning up lawnmowers and pulling wheelies on push bikes was to go racing in a mini. And so I built a Mini 850. Well, actually, first of all, I actually did a year of hill climbing. My dad was into, and my brother were into doing the British Hill Climb Championship, the Gyson Bead Blaster Championship, it was called then. And I did half a season of that. Was leading the championship, but then I rolled the car at Lowton Park. So,
Less than ideal.
well, basically, I had no money. The car came with 4 slicks. The front slicks were down to the canvas, as was pointed out by the scrutineer. I said, "Duh, I'll put some good ones on." So I actually put the ones which were down to the canvas on the back, put
Oh
the back
no.
ones on the front, presented it back to the scrutineer, and he said, "Yep, they're okay." My first run through what they call the semicircle at Lowton Park, a lot of oversteer. All of a sudden, I had grippy front end and a very loose back end, so to speak. And ended up turning the thing over, ending up in a lake on the inside of the track. And that was the end of that car. So I built that. I got another body shell from the breaker's yard, welded that up with my stick welder, and made it into a Mini 850 racer. And went out, came 10th in the championship in my first year, after doing maybe half the races. And second year won the championship. And I think I won 10 of the 12 rounds of the championship, including the support race to the British Grand Prix. So that's how good Mini 850s were in those days. You supported the British Grand Prix.
Wow. And I mean, well, to be fair, you've got classic minis now effect at certain events, supporting British touring cars. So there's something quite nostalgic and something that the Brits just love about a classic British Mini, not the BMW's ones that we see out now. But you won that Mini 850 championship. And did that kind of get your attention from, because we're kind of moving towards you racing Rover Metros now, but was that a factory backed effort? Well, how did that come about?
It wasn't a Rover Metro. That was much later. These were still they're Austin Rover Group. But no, I I had a neighbour who wanted to support me, so he bought an engine, and he bought
Okay.
an engine off Richard Longman, and it cost him what he said was a lot of money, and to me it was like unobtainable. But he bought an engine, and Richard Longman basically adopted me after that. He sponsored me, and he wanted me to win that championship, and he looked after me, and we won that championship because it was just like Swift Tune against CAD against all those engines nowadays. In the mini championship, it was the same thing. It was the battle of the engine builders, and Richard Longman won the championship through me. He then took me to the 1275 GTs. He actually came up to. I needed a sponsor for the 1275 GTs, which was the next class from the 850s, and I needed a sponsor. So I found a sponsor in a company called Harold Bloom Signs My Life, and he was in London. They were in London. So Richard Longman, as I was a tongue-tied, nervous kid in those days, I was like 20, but I was still sort of nervous, and so he came up with me to support me in trying to get this sponsorship, which we got. He met me at whatever station you arrive at from Christchurch, where Richard Longman is,
Yeah, yeah.
and I picked him up from there in my Ford Escort, which had a flat battery. So there's Richard Longman, and I think at that time he was British touring car champion.
Oh, crikey.
He was a bit of a legend. He was British touring car champion. Um, he had a works deal with Austin Rover Group, and there he was pushing me down the road, trying to bump start my Ford Escort. And eventually it started, and we went off and saw Harold Bloom and got the sponsorship. And but I didn't win that championship. I broke down too many times. I was over revving it on down change, and it broke the crankshaft twice. So I lost the championship to Steve Harris, and I came second in that. And then the following year, the Metros came out.
Right.
So I built the Metro. Again, the engine came from Richard Longman. Thank you, Richard. And I came second in that one to Steve Soper. At the start of the year with the Metros, as you know, as everybody knows, listen to this, they have hydrogas suspension.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't know that everybody let the hydrogas down. If you didn't let the hydrogas down, it went round the corners like a 2CV.
I can imagine.
So the first time I drove it was in qualifying at Silverstone, and there I was going around the corners like a 2CV, and I saw this car coming up behind me, and it was as flat as a pancake. It was like a Formula 3 car with a body on it, and that was Steve Soper, and he went shooting past me. I thought we're doing something wrong with the suspension. It took us about four races to suss out what to do, and basically you ran these things on the bump stops. You let down the hydrogas, you ran them on bump stops. Took 4 races to suss that out, and then I could beat Steve. But he'd got far enough ahead in the championship to beat me by, I think, 2 points, and he went on to be a superstar and left me behind. But I've had a good life anyhow.
Well, I don't suppose about leaving you behind. You certainly got to the far reaches. Okay, probably not as much as Steve Soper, but you certainly became a now household name in your own right. But racing those Rover Metros, I obviously referred to the Austin Rover Group sort of presence. So were you at all involved in the works team moving forward with the British Touring? Because they were in the lower classes of the British touring cars, weren't they?
Yeah, well, I came second in the Metro Challenge. Again, it was lack of budget and a bit of bad luck, and I came second in that championship. But after the final round of the championship, when Dave Carvell won the championship,
Yeah.
I came second. It was John Davenport, the head of Motorsport Austin Rover Group, that came up to you and said, "Will you race for us next year?" At that time, I was a sales rep selling storage racking in the southeast of England, and I had a company car. I had a Triumph Accord,
Yeah.
which was basically a Honda. I had a Triumph Accord, and I was on a salary of less than 10 grand, and with bonuses, I could make 10 grand. And John Davenport came up and said, "Look, will you race for us next year? We'll pay you 16 grand, and you get a company." And I got one of those, an MG Maestro. So yeah, I said, "Okay, I'll do that." I mean, I was so excited.
I can imagine.
It was unbelievable. And then I was in with the Works Metro team, which and my teammate was Tony Pond. So we
The
had
great Tony Pond.
the late great, and I mean he was a great mentor. We were good friends. We used to fly from race to race in his helicopter, and yeah, it was very, very, very. Yeah, he was a superstar, but he was contracted to Austin Rover Group to develop the 6R4 rally car,
Yeah.
but that wasn't ready for rallying. So they said, "Right, you're contracted. We're paying you a lot of money. You do the British Touring Car Championship whilst you're contracted to us." So that's why he was in with us. But then after a year, he went back to the rallying. He actually, he raced the Rover Vitesses in the ETC for a couple of races, and was pretty good. was pretty
I th-
good.
yeah,
In
I think somewhere on YouTube there are highlights of those races somewhere. Did you ever get an offer to drive the Vitesses at all?
No, I don't think Tom Walkinshaw liked me. Um, I was doing a race at Donington, the European Touring Car Championship race, and the Metro Turbo was out there. The Rover Vitesses were out there, and we qualified very well. The cars always qualified very well, and but the oil got too hot in the race, and they never lasted. So I was told to keep the oil below like 250 degrees centigrade or something ridiculously high. But yeah, don't let it go above that. So I was going slower and slower, trying to keep the oil temperature down, going around the track. And I'm going past the start and finish line at Donington, and halfway through the race, and Tom Walkinshaw comes up. He's dicing with a Volvo or a BMW, and he's leading the race. Tom Walkinshaw's leading the race, and he's in the lead. And this BMW or Volvo was right up behind him. So approaching Redgate, I just sort of ease over to the inside to give him the line through the corner. Afterwards, he gave me a big bollocking, saying that, why did you go for the inside there? If your brakes had failed, you would have taken me out. Um,
It's nice of him.
yeah, exactly. Um, he didn't understand me. And again, I was naive enough not to be able to explain to him. No, I never got on with Tom. If I, yeah, I think that was basically it. I think I was too shy. I was very shy in those days. I'm less shy now. When I first won the mini championship, I had a big speech planned for when I went up on the stage to accept my laurels and my trophy, and had it all planned. But I just froze. I went up there and I just said thank you because I was so nervous. Have you ever had that, Rob?
Uh,
You
I
probably haven't.
have. No, to be fair, in the early days when I was with Club Racing UK and doing the podcast, I used to get really bad nerves before we go live, and um, haven't quite, a few times I've presented in the modified Fords do, and that's quite nerve wracking, and I've kind of stuttered to a bit of a start and then got going. So I can fully empathise with you there, Patrick. It must have been quite daunting getting up, fairly large crowd of people. You've just won a championship, and everyone just kind of turns to look at you. What you got to say?
Yeah. And that was my problem. I was very nervous to speak in public until really when I was racing in the British Touring Car Championship with Mazda. I did a after dinner speech. I was persuaded to do an after dinner speech for the Brighton and Hove Motor Club,
Yeah.
and I was asked for a couple of years to do that. And what was I mean, I must have been 30, so I should have been pretty good at that sort of thing. But no, um, okay, eventually I'll do it. I wrote the speech on the way down there whilst Pam drove me. I wrote the speech and rehearsed it and rehearsed it. And we got down there and they had long tables all next to each other. And we ate the din-dins. And then it was me announced for, right, Patrick Watts is our after dinner speaker. Over to Patrick Watts, the touring car driver. And I was so nervous I had to do the speech word for word as I'd written it, with no feeling, just reading the words as they go. And I didn't really notice until afterwards, but on the table next to us, the after dinner liqueurs were coming round, and a tray full of flaming zambucas was 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 spilt on the table. The table was on fire. Women were on fire. Everybody got up, people falling off the backs of their chairs to get away from the tablecloth that was on fire. I
Oh my
did, I
god.
did, I did not hesitate. I did not miss a word. I didn't include that in my speech. I didn't notice it. I just needed to get through and they were 10 feet away from me. But no, I hardly noticed it until afterwards when I saw a big steaming pile of tablecloth in the middle of the table, and everybody sort of laughing, and no one was listening to me anyhow, so it didn't make any difference.
I think they were
That's
too
how
busy trying
nervous I
to
was.
calm down the
Yeah,
chaos.
yeah. So I think that held me back. The fact that I was nervous in public, I was nervous to speak to people, that the real Patrick Watts didn't come through. And I
Yeah.
think that held me up. Otherwise, I could have. I remember going up to Alan Gow once. Alan Gow and Jeff Allen were chatting when I
Hmm.
was in touring cars. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I went up to them, and we'd just bought a house. I'd all my hard-earned shekels. I'd bought a new house, and it had a little swimming pool. So I went up there. They said, "Oh, what you been up to, Patrick?" I said, "I've just bought a house with a swimming pool." And I was so proud of that. I don't know why I said it, but they took the piss out of me. Oh, you got a swimming pool. Oh, look, Patrick's got a swimming pool. Of course, they've all got swimming pools. They've all got swimming pools. I mean, Jeff Adam inherited his swimming pool, probably. I'd
Yeah.
earned that, and I was proud of it. But I was too nervous to answer back, so I sort of walked away, sort of like embarrassed. That's
Yeah.
the Patrick Watts then. Now I'd say, look, fuck off, you cunts, and
That's the Patrick we know.
and then I'd pour beer over them and have a laugh. It it would be fine. In those days, I couldn't say boo to a goose, and I think that held me back. It held me back. Um,
I'd tell
so
you one thing you would have done back then. The one thing you would have done, Patrick, and there's no shame in that. You did the talking on the track
well,
for sure.
I think I did. I did. I think I was a bit of an outsider in the British Touring Car Championship if we're going on to the touring cars,
Well,
because
I mean, to be fair, there's a fair chunk there. I mean, championship after championship after championship. I mean, 1986 racing in the Fiat Uno Turbo Championship. You win the inaugural Honda CRX Championship in 1988, and then you do it again in 1990, where you also win the Mazda MX5 Championship. You then step up to Production Saloon Car Championships, winning another title. I mean, that's you
yeah.
know,
Well, this is why I ended up with Mazda in the British Touring Car Championship. Again, due to my naivety, and I mean, I've only sort of got streetwise in the last few years. I think I always look back and I think, well, I would have done that differently. But I suppose it doesn't matter what age you are. You always say, you always learn, don't you? And therefore, what I did 5 years ago isn't what I'd do now. I'd get better,
yeah,
And
yeah.
with going with Mazda, first of all, I had the offer with Mazda, and the reason I had an offer with Mazda is because Roger Dowson was preparing the car. Roger Dowson ran the Metro Turbos in the British Touring Car Championship. Therefore, he knew my capabilities.
And the relationship would have already been there between both you and and Roger from days of old. So
Yeah,
naturally, it must have been a good move.
and winning the Mazda Championship. So my relationship was there with Mazda UK. The tyres were supplied by Dunlop, and I supported Dunlop in the Mazda MX5 Championship when all the other competitors said, as soon as you lock these tyres up, you flat spot them and they puncture. And they were complaining to Dunlop about the fragility of the slick tyres we ran in the MX5 Championship. And I said, well, I've never locked one up and I've won all the races.
Yeah.
So I supported Dunlop there. And also, when I won the Esso Saloon Car Championship, I was in a Peugeot supported by Shell. And therefore, when Mazda, Roger Dowson, Dunlop, and Shell get together with the inaugural 2-litre Touring Car Championship, who do they pick as a driver? Well, yeah, it was
Yours
going to,
truly.
yeah. But then I got a phone call from Jan O'Dore to go to Nissan with Keith. So I went down to wherever they are, Salisbury, to see Jan O'Dore, and yeah, I was very interested in going with Nissan. So which one do I choose, Mazda or Nissan? But I'd already sort of verbally agreed on the Mazda thing. Then I got a phone call from Alan Gow. This is in 1992. I get a phone call from Alan Gow, who I hadn't heard of.
Yeah.
No one had heard of him. He'd won the he'd run the Australian touring cars, and
Yeah, yeah, and
he'd come
he'd
over.
run Peter Brock, and then decided I fancy a crack at the UK.
So he came over, and he was working for Andy Rouse. So on behalf of Andy Rouse, Alan Gow phones me up and says, "Will you race alongside Andy in the Securicor Toyotas?"
Okay.
And I said, "Well, I can't, because I'd love to, but I can't because I've already agreed to do the Mazda." Now, if I'd been sensible, or I'd had an agent working for speaking on my behalf, someone I knew in motorsport, which I never had any relatives involved in motorsport or anything, and I live in Kent, which is miles away from the Golden Triangle of Banbury and all that sort of stuff.
Absolutely, yeah.
And yeah, someone would have said, huh, forget Mazda, forget the one man team, one car team Mazda, go to Andy Rouse. And that's probably the first big mistake I made in with the opportunities that now were presented to me.
Hmm.
I could have been alongside Andy instead of Will Hoy, the late great Will Hoy, and I know I could have done very well in that car. I know I could have done very well in that car.
But then potentially that could have then led to you being part of the Ford setup going in 93, 94.
Yeah, yeah. I got an offer to be in the Alfa Romeo after Tarquini went, because I gave Gabrielli quite a few battles with the little Peugeot 405
Yeah.
on the twistier tracks like Brands Hatch or whatever. And there's a great picture of him turning into Westfield with the rest of the pack of cars all strung out 4 or 5 car lengths behind him on the first lap. Gabrielli's
Yeah.
leading in the Alpha, and then I'm nowhere there. But actually, if you look very carefully at his car, it's got 2 wing mirrors on one side of it. I'm stuck right on his boot lid. You can see every single car there, but the Alfa Romeo's got 2 wing mirrors on one side, and one of those wing mirrors is the Peugeot. So I gave him a good battle for a few laps in that, and I think Alfa Romeo wanted me, but obviously Derek Warwick's name came on the fold, and yeah, who would you pick?
Yeah, he had the Formula One prestige at the time. But I mean that
Yeah,
Mazda season in the Zedas, albeit it didn't, you didn't manage to get any wins in the car, but it showed so much promise, and there were a lot of times where you were right up at the sharp end in that car.
yeah.
Um,
I had a couple of poles, and I think one pole and one second at Knock Hill, but no, the car didn't have it for the duration of a race. You can qualify a car, but as we know from watching Formula One, a car that qualifies well doesn't necessarily look after its tires for a whole race. And in touring cars, the tires would be off after a few laps. At Snetterton, I don't know what would have happened, but I was on pole. I did a good start, but I was alongside Steve Soper in his BMW.
yeah,
We went into the first corner. He had obviously got a better start than me, rear wheel drive against front wheel drive. So he was just in front of me, we were overlapping, but be slightly behind him,
yeah,
alongside his door, going through the first corner. I had a little bit of oversteer through there, not a problem. Keep your foot down. Little bit of opposite lock, let the car run out. I couldn't let it run out. Steve was there. I was pushed up against his right rear wheel. I couldn't put opposite lock on. I would have taken him out. So basically, the back came round, and that's it. I spun out. I mean, or you could say that Steve cut me up and cut me too close.
What might have been, unfortunately.
But slightly cold rear tires on a front-wheel drive car, and yeah, you need a bit more track, and he cut me a bit too tight, and yeah, the front went, but the back carried on in the direction of the carrot field.
Less than ideal. So you had that initial baptism of fire in the Super Touring era of the British touring cars, '93. What happened with your move to Peugeot? Did you know at that point that Mazda perhaps weren't going to continue in a full works effort, or did Peugeot just come calling? What happened there?
Peugeot came calling. Because I'd won the SO Saloon Car Championship for Peugeot. That was the car built at Humber Road. That was '91, I think, when I won the SO Saloon Car Championship in the 309 GT, whatever it is, 16 valve left hand
Yeah,
drive thing. And they obviously wanted me, but it was a funny thing actually that it was run by Des O'Dell then. And Des O'Dell said, "Look, you're really good. You won that championship, and that's really great. And I've got some good news and some bad news." And he said, "The bad news is you won't be driving for us next year." I said, "Well, what's the good news then?" He said, "We have got a champion driving for us instead. We've got Rob Gravitt." I said, "Oh, well, good luck with that then."
yeah.
Um, love Rob as I do. Yeah. Anyhow, let's move on. Um, 2 years later, they get rid of Rob and they put me in there, and we have quite a few successes. No, not wins, but quite a few podiums with the 405. That
Again,
405 was I think that was a French car, and as soon as the UK start to build the cars, things get slower. That
I
car
mean,
worked.
yeah, I mean it's well noted if you look back on old touring car programs, and Tim Harvey said in various interviews when he's spoken about it, and Patrick, you're probably going to tell us as well, the UK arm of Peugeot, it was underfunded. Not the French cars had all the development, all the backing, the engine work, and such. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah. But basically, Laurent Aiello won the German Touring Car Championship, and we struggled to be in the top 10 in the British Championship in the same year. But at the start of that year, Peugeot had decided to subcontract the manufacture of the cars and the running of the cars to MSD,
Yeah,
who were fantastic at building rally cars. And in fact, they'd been involved with the Honda Accords the year before,
yeah.
but they were given the option. Peugeot UK were given the option: do you want to work with the French, and they'll build the cars for us, and we run them, or do you want to go on your own? And Peugeot UK made the decision: let's go on our own. Let's leave those French people to their own stuff. We know better than them. So that was a big mistake. When Peugeot France decide to go motor racing, and when they decide to go out and go to the DTM and win it, yeah, I think we could have done well to go along with what their designs were on the car. I was so interested in seeing their car. I
Mm.
know I know our Peugeot 406 intimately because I've got it in the garage. This
Yeah.
is the one that the '98 car that Radisish, after they got rid of me, Radisish and Harvey drove in the 1998 British Touring Car Championship,
Mm.
and then they weren't successful. Those cars went out to Australia, and a guy called Paul Grimm ran the cars over there. He looked them over, changed
Yeah.
the setup, got me over there to do the first 4 rounds of the championship, of which I won one and came second in the other two or whatever. So I was
Yeah.
basically leading the Australian touring car championship in it,
Yeah.
and I was very interested to. And then anyhow, it sat there for like 15 odd years until touring cars became historic cars, and they started going up in value, and people were talking about a historic super touring championship here. So I inquired and I bought those cars back, and so I know them intimately. So when a guy contacted me who had Laurent Aiello's car,
Hmm.
the Jägermeister, or having what the
It
yellow,
was.
yellow and blue.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's the sponsor on there? But
It
anyhow,
was. I think it was some German beer company, wasn't it?
it was a German beer company, yeah. And anyhow, a guy in Belgium has got that car, and I said, look, I want to come down and look at it. I want to see it. I want to see what the difference is. And so I whizzed down to the other side of Brussels and had a look at the car. And it was simple compared with ours. It didn't have all the carbon fibre. They'd spent their money on other stuff.
Hmm.
The uprights were much bigger and stiffer than on ours. And I've got all the setup sheets. And it was interesting. The setup sheets talk in terms of the shore hardness of the front suspension bump rubbers. They run the front end on rubber, and it was all down
Wow.
to the hardness of the rubber on the front end. And the other thing they did, they ran masses of caster angle. So they had various blades they could put in the steering rack, depending on the feel you wanted, according to the massive amount of caster angle. Now, I then spoke to other people about this caster angle, and I spoke to Dick Bennett's of West Surrey Racing about it. After
Yeah.
this is all history now, so he can tell me what he likes. And he
Yeah. Yeah.
and he was saying, yeah, we were running on the Nissans for Aiello. Back to Aiello again. When he ran Aiello in the British Touring Car Championship, those Nissans were built in Japan.
Yeah. Yeah.
They arrived to West Surrey Racing like a month before the first race, all built
Do it.
in Japan, and they arrived. And he said they got no power steering. And Japan said, yeah, we don't need power steering. We've got like 4.5 degrees of caster. You don't need power steering. He says, you need 14 or 15 degrees caster angle. Therefore, you need power steering. He said, well, we haven't got time to develop that. Dick put that on the car. Those cars ran 14 or 15 degrees caster angle. That is the secret that everybody's found to make those cars quick. The Peugeot was incapable of getting more than 4.5 degrees caster angle. And you couldn't, the roll cage and the way the suspension was all set up, you could not modify that to make it more. So that was Peugeot's mistake in designing those cars. They haven't got the caster angle that you need.
And it's a shame, really, because surely without the sort of belligerence of no, we could do our own thing. Not even going out doing what you did. Effectively, you've contacted someone and go, "Can I just come and have a look at what you've done?" I'm pretty sure. I mean, there was kind of strained Anglo-English relations. I kind of get that between the countries, but I'm sure they wouldn't have turned around and said no if the team would have just said, "Look, can we just pop over and have a look at how you've done your chassis? You don't have to send us anything; just let us have a look." And surely that would have given them a bit of an idea.
So if they didn't do that, you could actually say that the guys that ran our cars were arrogant. And if you had said that, I'd agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, obviously,
It was total arrogance that held us back. The cars are beautifully built, but they should have asked advice of somebody who was building cars that was leading the German Touring Car Championship. But no, there was no communication there. They were totally ignorant. I was probably the first person to ever see one of those cars because it interested me. It obviously didn't interest them because we knew better, they said. It was
But
very,
yeah, they
it
were
was
in
very
Europe doing all the winning.
frustrating for me. It was very frustrating for me. And when you're in a car that is constant, you have to really fight to get in the top 10. Okay, like fifth or sixth, maybe if it was wet. We had one freaky. I'll tell you about one freaky day. I had some friends from New Zealand over, and this was the British Touring Car Championship test day, mid 1997. Alan Menu is leading the championship in the Renault. We're constantly the Peugeots are constantly just in the top 10,
Yeah,
and we go to Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit testing with all the other teams, and it's wet in the morning, and I'm quickest. Well, I'm good in the wet anyhow, so it didn't surprise me that I was quickest in the wet. But I said to my New Zealand friends, "You wait until this afternoon when it's dry. We'll be back. We'll be 10th quickest." These cars work well in the wet, but in the dry, they're shit, you know.
yeah,
So come the afternoon after lunch, it's dry, and I go out there. I'm still quickest, and in the end of the day, I was quickest or second quickest with Winkelhock. John Clelland, Menu, all these people are a second slower than me, and we're trying a new differential out. We're trying a viscous, a dual diff, which is part viscous, part plate. We've never used one before. Eureka! We found it. I'm quickest. I'm beating everybody.
hmm.
Engineers write up was that, and I remember to this day. Where's the car slow? Where's the oversteering? Where's the understeering? I said it's not. It's not understeering anywhere. Maybe mid corner of the transition between off the power and off the brakes and onto the power, mid druids. It might be understeering a little bit, but then it picks up, and the rest, all Westfield, Hawthorne, it's all neutral to oversteer. Very quick, fantastic. Which the lap time proved it. You know, it was fantastic. Eureka, we found it. It's this new differential. Tim hasn't got the differential in the car, but he tries it at Snetterton later on that week,
Yeah.
and he has the new diff in his car. So afterwards, I phone up and I say, "How did Tim get on with the new diff?" No improvement really. It wasn't particularly quick. So that's interesting. Okay. But anyhow, we're looking forward, and then we got the race at Brands Hatch 2 weeks after the test, and we go out for qualifying, and I'm like 12th quickest. It's understeering everywhere. Understeer through clearways, understeer through paddock, understeer through juries, understeer everywhere. I said, "What have you done to the car?" They said, "No, we set it up exactly the same. We took it back, we measured it, we got everything aligned. Even if it was out of line, we'd put it back out of line. It was identical. Your car is identical to when you raced it last." I said, "But it's understeering everywhere. It's a heap of rubbish." And yeah, that was it. It was a really something made that car quick that day.
And you
But
think it was that diff?
but the no, that diff, we used that diff thereafter. No one knows what it is, and whenever I bump into that engineer that ran it, um, um, we always say, what happened that day? What happened that day? And what was it we hit on that we didn't know what it was? Something there, but they didn't know what it was that made it quick. I mean, it's great to find something, the secret of making a car quick, but not knowing what that secret was and then losing it is even more frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, could it be down to a specific set of tyres? I know there was still quite a lot of tyre war going on back in the day.
No,
Could that have been a factor?
that is something we looked at. We said, did we get a set of special Yokohamas that were destined for aluminium? No, because we did 3 sets of tires that afternoon. So
Same
it
result.
same result. Yeah, yeah, and it was quickest in the wet as well. That they hit on something and they didn't realise what it was, and then forgot all about it. So that was frustrating. Otherwise, if they'd known what they'd got, yeah, I could have won races.
Absolutely, and I mean, you had four, so from 94, 95. It was promised getting good results. French built car, then the British built car. I mean, 95 obviously looked a lot more frustrating in the last year for the 405, and then the promise and how good that 406 looked. But as you described it, Patrick, the kind of maybe the arrogance of the UK side going, no, we want to do our own thing. Maybe if you give us your engines, but a decision made in the beginning of the development stage is maybe put pay to them.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
um, and it must have been incredibly frustrating for yourself and Tim. You had flashes of pace in '97 with MSD. I mean, Tim had that remarkable drive at Thruxton in the wet. It was always when it rained, and as you described, the car was quick in the wet, and that was about it.
Hold on. I'll tell you about Thruxton.
Oh, come on!
I'll tell you. I think if you look at the records, I qualified about, I don't know, fifth or sixth quickest.
You did, yes.
Tim qualified about 15th or 16th quickest.
Okay.
And we set off on a dry track. It started to rain. And as Tim was so far back, they had nothing to lose but put him on wet tyres.
Yeah.
So he was on wet tyres laps before anybody else.
Yeah. So that kind of gave him the extra time to.
Meantime, out the back, whilst it's starting to rain, gets up to third position, past the Renaults, and I was in third position, and I put the wipers on, so I reached down on the central console to put the wipers on, approaching church, and there's a wire going across
Ooh.
to the master switch. My glove catches the wire and turns the engine off.
Oh, you're joking.
And not only turns the master switch off, the master switch on the wire then comes out the slot.
Oh no, nightmare. So you can't even just flick it back on quickly. You're
No.
then fumbling and scrambling.
So I had one thing to do. Right, I've got to get my head down there. I've got to look down what I'm doing, and I've got to grab that, put it in the slot. If I half-heartedly do it and keep looking up, I'll never do it. I've got to go down there, grab that, put it in there, and turn it on, and then I can watch where I'm going. By which time I've missed church and I'm off in the trees.
I love that.
Yeah.
Oh, Patrick,
mean,
and that must have been gutting,
yeah.
especially
And
what
then
might have been.
from the trees, I watched Tim come second. Yeah, and he's a hero.
Gutting.
Yeah.
Gutting. So
We were testing at Thruxton, and Tim had a well-known engineer looking after him, whereas I had the YTS boy.
yeah,
So I basically engineer my own car. We're testing with MSD, and I'm miles quicker than Tim, and my speed through Allard and out the back is like 10, 15 kph quicker through the corners than Tim's, and I've gone very soft on the suspension, supporting it on the dampers. Basically, I've gone very soft, and Tim's on sort of like harder springs. So in the lunch break, I said, "Look, I'm going to go softer again." And as a control, Tim, if he goes to the same springs as I was running this morning, then we'll be able to compensate for the track change differences, and that will be a good test.
yeah.
So I go a little bit softer, and the car's good. The car's quick still. Car's good. So after that test, right, how did Tim get on with the same springs as I had this morning? We didn't do that. We actually went harder with Tim's. So that's why his 4 seconds a lap slower than me, or 2 seconds a lap slower than me. It meant nothing. The test meant nothing because I'd gone to it and he was the control. No, they went stiffer on the springs, which is totally illogical.
Hmm.
We were at Bathurst. We did Bathurst.
Well, so yeah. So that was sort of the end of '97. So was that a concerted effort from UK? Because I know at that point it was the whole war down under, the split, 2 races, and a load of money was put to teams to get you guys out there. So was that Peugeot being paid by the Australians to go down there, or was it a privateer effort?
It was Peugeot. No, Inchcape. I think Inchcape put up some money, but I don't know. I got paid to go there anyhow, and the cars ran in the SO Ultron livery over there. But I think we were involved with Inchcape, who are the big importers for that part of the world.
Okay.
But I wasn't really involved in that side of it. Tim and I were just paid to go there. I had Neil Cunningham, Neil Crompton. Neil
Neil
Crompton is
Crompton,
a
yes.
teammate, and Tim had Paul Radisich as his
Yeah.
teammate. And it was interesting because Tim and I had never been to Bathurst before, yet we were 2 seconds quicker than Paul Radisich, who'd already been penciled in to replace me the following year. So I said to Mick Linford, the team manager, I said, look, I'm miles quicker than Radisich. Why would you want him, you know? Well,
Yeah.
you know. But anyhow, Neil Crompton unfortunately buzzed the engine. And we have
And that
two
was the end of
engines.
that.
He buzzes the engine in the testing. So we have to use the race engine for qualifying. So by the time it comes around to the top 10 shootout, which Tim and I are both in, I'm actually running on the race engine, and that's the 12th ever lap I've done around the circuit.
And you've obviously got that in the back of your mind when you're about to go into that top 10 shootout, right?
Yeah, I mean, but I've only done 12 laps around the circuit. But prior to that, we have a 20-minute untimed warm up in the morning. So our only worry with a front wheel drive car on a out the pits 1 lap and go for it is, are the rear tires going to be warm enough? So we decide in the briefing beforehand, right, Tim, you go out on your standard setup 1 lap and try it out and see how the setup is. And I said, I'll go a little bit softer on the rear roll bar to get the rear tires warm, yeah, and compensate for the lack of grip by putting a
Yep.
bit more weight on the back. I'll go on the softer roll bar on the back, and we'll rehearse that and see how we get on. So we go out on the untimed warm up, and okay, I've done a reasonable lap time. How was Tim? Tim's quickest. Brilliant. Tim's quickest. Great. So that worked. No, he did 1 lap. He came in the pits. They front to reared the tyres, and he went out and did 4 more laps and was quickest. I said, what has that got to do as a rehearsal to a 1 lap shootout that we're having this afternoon? We're having a 1 lap shootout this afternoon, which is out the pits, 1 warm-up lap, and go for it. We're rehearsing that. What's front to rearing the tyres got to do with that? What's doing 6 laps got to do with a rehearsal for a 1 lap shootout? That was the frustration with MSD. They just totally illogical, didn't work as a team, and hence we were not a winning team.
But once again, you showed flashes of pace down in Bathurst. I mean, again, it's another one. I think the coverage for that event is still on YouTube. So if you are listening to this, guys, more by all means, head over to YouTube. and have a watch of that, because it is great coverage. And I think Alan Moffat's in the coverage of Murray Walker and some, and to be fair, Patrick, you guys are up against some serious drivers down there. You've got the locals, Greg Murphy, Russell Ingle, Triple Eight had quite a few cars out there. Both Stephen and Jim Richards are out there, and you guys are mixing up at the great race.
Well,
And
I actually knew the car wouldn't last in the race. It was, the cars didn't last for half an hour, let alone a 3-hour race or whatever it was. So I thought the only way we're going to get publicity. So I just stuck behind Peter Brock. I mean,
well,
Peter,
yeah,
the cameras are on Brocky the whole time.
absolutely, yeah.
So if you look at that, I'm stuck behind Brock in his Vauxhall or a Holden, whatever you call it over there. But he was driving a Holden Vauxhall, and with John Cleland, and I just stick behind him. I thought if the camera's going to be on him, there's no point in overtaking him because the car's going to blow up anyhow. Let's just take it easy. Let's draft along behind Brocky and get a bit of camera.
Exactly, and
You
I
know,
suppose the logic would be out in Australia, if you could keep up with Peter Brock, you're all right. You could do it. So
I could have overtaken him.
exactly. So the Australian Super Touring deal. Did you know at that point that the cars were ultimately going to stay in Australia?
um, I wasn't involved that. There's a guy called Paul Grimm, and he basically worked for Peugeot Australia or worked on behalf of them, and he got the cars over there,
Yeah,
and he got me over there to drive them. And we turned up at the first race, but you had Greg Murphy and all these people there, and Jim Richards, and they were in. Jim was in the works, the Volvos, the same
yeah.
Volvo as that had won the touring car championship in the UK the year before. You had I can't remember their names. Morris in
Paul
the
Morris, yeah.
Paul Morris in the four-wheel drive Audis. You had the BMWs, and that was Greg, wasn't it? Greg Murphy or
I think
no?
Greg. So was this 99? So I think Greg Murphy was. I don't know if he was still in the Super Tours at that point.
Who
He
was it?
must.
Who was in the
Brad Jones in the
Brad Jones?
Audis. Yeah.
Brad Jones in the Audi. No, one of the guys in the BMW is the BMW guy. Not Greg.
So
But
it would
anyhow,
have Paul Morris was in a BMW. Yeah.
maybe it's Paul Morris. Yeah. But anyhow, I'm up against all them. But and they've got big Arctics, just like the British Touring Car Championship. We turned up with a Ute with a few deck chairs in it, a cool box with beers in it, and a trailer with the Peugeot on it, because a lot of the spares hadn't turned up. So
Oh
we
God.
have to. So the car's too low to unload it, so they have to go out to the spectator area, find a rise in the bank, and they unload the car there. So we're sitting in our garage with the deck chairs, plastic deck chairs, a cool box, and the car, and the ute, and a few tools.
I bet you
Um,
still had as much fun as the guys with the Arctics did.
well, I put it on poll. I went out there, and it was, we're all on slicks. This was the lakeside,
Yeah.
and it's starting to rain. He says, Patrick, do you want to be on wet? So I said, no, it's not raining that much. I'll stay on slicks. In the British Touring Car Championship, you stay on slicks, because they're soft. I didn't realise these were actually control tyres, and they're a little bit harder. But anyhow, go out on slicks, and I go round and round, and P1. I thought, that's good. And next lap, P2. Oh, shit, I have to go a bit quicker. P1. Then eventually I'm going at the back of Lakeside. There's a 6-gear bendy bit, left and right behind the pits. And I'm going down there, and it's aquaplaning, and I'm going from lock to lock through there. And right, okay, that is a killer lap. Right, no one's going to go quicker than that in the world. Cross the line, P1. Next lap, fucking P2. I thought, and then the session's over. So I come in, I say, who in earth was quicker than me? I said, well, Jim Richards is. But they're all on wets. So,
Oh,
oh, okay. Right, okay. um, but come the race, my experience on the wets was good because halfway through the race, I set off and I get into the lead. And halfway through the race, it starts to rain. And I think it was Paul Morris, the guy in the BMW.
yeah,
He is hard on my bumper. And from the word go, in the dry, then it's getting wetter and wetter. And every single corner is a little bit slipperier. And you just have to get it dead right, you know? And
yeah, yeah.
and then approaching one corner, there's a left-hander before a long right-hander on the start finish line. Um, I go in there a little bit too quick, a big sideways, right? He's going to get through, he's going to get through. But no, his sideways is on the grass as well. We're both on the grass. We get off the grass, we resume. Then it gets drier and drier and drier until at the end, the lap times are as quick as they were at the start. It's dry enough for that. But that was a very difficult race, but I was happy to win that race. That was good, and that got a lot of publicity from the Aussies. Um, I think what Wayne Rainey, Wayne Rainey had a big picture on the back of their national newspaper, and I had a bigger picture underneath him. So
Fantastic.
no, doing was it was doing, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
He was their Australian hero. Yeah, I had a bigger picture than Jared on the back of their sports page, and no, that was very good. And I got a lot of compliments off the Australians, and that was the end of my proper motor racing career. I'd say, my international or my professional motor racing career, and I finished on a high in Australia, and they all said, "What the hell are the Brits? Why did the Brits get rid of you?" Yeah, because I proved I was the class of when I went to Australia. So it made me feel good. It made me feel good.
I mean, good to go out on a high, but I mean, obviously, back in the UK, so that was '99. We all know British touring cars as super. The last year of super touring was bonkers by the time it reached the year 2000, and the bubble burst. So you had three works teams, and they realised something's got to give. And 2001, it goes into a new era with the production spec cars and the BTC spec cars. Did you ever get an offer after your Australian trip in '99 to go back to British touring cars for one of the teams then?
No, no, no.
I don't understand why. I don't get that. But I mean, maybe at that point times had changed and they thought, they could perhaps still go internationally for their drivers if they wanted to. But
To be honest, Rob, was I interested? I don't know if I was interested. Um,
okay,
I mean,
and yeah, there's I
there are people
suppose
that I think motor racing is professional motor racing is a short little window
yeah.
in your life.
Right, so we had a bit of a disturbance there. Lovely technical issues just stepping in, but we got Patrick back. So we're at 1999. You've had your race wins and gone out on a high in terms of your professional career in Australia,
I'm
and you
back from
haven't.
Australia. Yeah, I had
Uh,
fun doing that. The British Touring Car Championship is like about to die a death. It has got so expensive now that Ford like chucked loads of money at it in the final year, and I think it put other people off. And then that was the end of like works drives in the British Touring Car Championship, and there weren't many paid drives thereafter. Um, so I was not looking to get back in the British Touring Car Championship.
so from that end, what kind of interested you at that point? You did. I mean, 2006 is still a fair amount away, a few years. So was it no racing at all around that period, or did you just kind of dabble a bit here and there?
It was, but I wasn't really interested. I was a little bit pissed off that I was chucked out of Peugeot. Um, I was happy that that Peugeot moved out. They got out that championship a year later. Anyhow, works drives were not available. Um, I was getting on a bit. I was like 42, 43 years old. And I had the rest of my life in front of me. So I had a business in storage racking at that stage, and I got that back going. Um, the guy that ran it for me when I was racing, um, unfortunately died in a road accident when
Yeah.
when I was racing in Australia. So, but we're just taking on a big mortgage of a big property, and that gave us a mortgage of just over £1 million um, a year. And then my friend Russell, who ran the thing, he is no more. Yeah, it was hands to the grindstone for 5 years. Built that company back up again. Sold it. Started a electronic recycling company, which now has grown. So at the start of the WE directive, waste electronics and electrical equipment recycling,
Yep.
we were on the ground floor when that started in 2007, and we're now the biggest in Europe. So
Fantastic.
that's made me more money, and the motor racing would have done, unless, of course, I was Lewis Hamilton.
Well,
And it's given me a hell of a lot of satisfaction. It's an engineering puzzle. Recycling is the art of separation,
yeah.
finding the difference between one commodity and the next, and finding out what splits the two of them. And it gets quite technical. And we recycle about 200 tons of waste electronics every day. As I said, we're probably the biggest in Europe. We do all the electronic recycling for municipal. 10% of what we do is for Apple, Barclays, Disney, Bloomberg. We've got some top customers, and I'm retired from that now. I'm still a shareholder. I'm retired from that, and I just play with cars now. I
Play
do
with cars. I
during
mean,
I do during
it
the week what I used to do at weekends.
fantastic. I mean, you dabbled a bit. Obviously, 2006, you went to do a bit of historic rallying. Was that the first time you'd ever done any rallying of any sorts, or had you tried it
Yeah,
before?
I did the tour of Britain for Honda in 1980 something or other. In what was that? About 89. I did the tour of Britain, and Steve Soper, my friend Steve Soper, said, "Patrick, you'll crash. You will drive 10 tenths. Rally drivers drive 9 tenths or 8 tenths. You will drive 10 tenths." And Steve, when have you ever driven 10 tenths? We're both 11 tenths, you know. And sure enough, I had some very close misses, but I did finish the rally. Um, but I ended up in ditches and all sorts of things, but got out of them. And no, but basically, when I did the British Historic Rally Championship, Ray Bellham was a touring car driver,
Yeah, yeah.
a gentleman driver, you'd say. But I read an article in Autosport about him doing the British Historic Rally Championship in an Escort, and I thought that would be a lot of fun. That would
Yeah.
be a lot of fun. And so me and Richard Asquith, who prepared rally cars, happened to live about a mile and a half from me here in Kent. Um, Between the two of us, we converted my road going Sunbeam Tiger into a rally car. And I went out and yeah, I did okay. Did okay in the first year. I did about 4 or 5 events in the first year. Second year, I won the championship, and that was great fun. It was great fun going, from England, Ireland, Scotland, Wales, Belgium, um, and Elgin Davis was my navigator. I couldn't have done it without Elgin. He knows most of these special stages around Europe pretty well, like the back of his hand. Um, Apart from sometimes he doesn't know his left from his right. Um, but that's only a couple of incidents. But yeah, we had great fun, and beat Desi Nut, the Tut Hill cars, Tuthill was forever protesting me because he couldn't understand why the Sunbeam Tiger was beating his Porsches. But my car was proved to be legal, and his Porsches were proved not to be legal when they found out he had Safari suspension hidden inside the struts in his cars. But no, great fun. And then I
See,
did that the following year, and I came second the following year in the championship, and then I went back to racing again, bought a Mustang, did the Masters touring cars, pre-66 touring cars in the Mustang,
yep.
and then it got into a bit of an arms race, whereby engine builders who pairing cars or engines for people's cars in historic racing were constantly coming up with new ideas to make these cars faster and faster. And the Mustang engine I had started off, it was a Steve Warrior engine. It started off with like 425 horsepower, which was a very good engine. But nowadays they're running like 460 horsepower because they recast the blocks. They out of different modular iron, they can use more revs. They recast the heads, which, according to the FIA, are identical, apart from the waterways are different, so they can put in different size ports and different shaped ports, and they have special crankshafts. And these engines are a fortune. And it's an arms race. And as soon as you've upgraded your engine one year, the next year they've found another 20 horsepower. You in historic racing, the trouble is it's not well policed.
Yeah.
Yes, they've all got to have FIA passports, but that's only on the day the scrutineer looks at the car in your garage. As soon as that scrutineer goes and has done all the photographs, out comes that engine, out comes that gearbox, off comes all that suspension, and the car's made into a hot rod again.
Hmm.
And that's why I've really left historic racing, is because it's full of cheats. And it's not police, so they can do that. It's full of rich businessmen that want to win at all costs. So they just say to the preparer or the engine builder, build that thing, build a bigger engine for this race or that race, and they've got no qualms about it. I love what we're doing now. I love the Citroen C1. You know, obviously we met up at the Citroen C1 Racing
We
Championship, didn't we,
did.
Rob?
Yeah, absolutely.
And
And so I
you
mean, what?
commentate on that, and you race your EcoBoost Fiesta, and on some of the events. But
Yeah.
that's how we know each other.
Yeah. I
And
mean, so the C1s, how did that come about for you? Was it something that you just decided, you know what, it looks fun, I'm going to have a bit of a crack at that?
well, first of all, I didn't know what a C1 was, but I got a phone call from Simon Harrison, an old teammate from the Peugeot days.
Yeah.
I think it was the Total car he drove,
Yeah,
the 405,
95?
95, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyhow, he phones up and says, look, me and my mate, he said, are doing the Citroen C1 24-hour race at Silverstone. Do you want to do it with us? And I said, yeah, love to. What date to do? Yeah, that'll do. And then I get onto Google, what is the Citroen C1? And I saw about it. It looks like a bit of fun, you know, a little 1 litre car. But we ended up on a grid of 100 cars that year. Was it 99 cars, Rob?
Yeah, 99 cars that year.
It was 99 cars, and we led for about 16 hours and lost the lead on the last lap
Yeah.
because we started to run out of fuel. We lost 14 seconds on the last lap. So we started the last lap. We were right next to the guy with the checkered flag. It was 24 hours was up. The guy was there with the checkered flag. Simon came round. He was in the car at that time. He came round. We're all on there, about to cheer, and the bloody flag doesn't go down. He got there 4 seconds too early, or too
Oh
late.
no.
Too late. So right, it's going to be one more lap.
I can
The
remember
guy
watching it
who's
on the live stream.
the guy who's in second position is 7 seconds behind. One more lap to go. Simon's in the car shitting himself because he knows that the fuel gauge has been on zero for the last 4 laps,
Yeah,
and the little pip at the end of the scale is flashing. That means he's got about 4 laps, and he's had 4 laps, and it's been flashing for 4 laps. He's running out of fuel, and sure enough, on that lap, it stuttered a few
it
times.
coughed.
It coughed, and he lost 14 seconds. So we came second by 7 seconds instead of winning by 7 seconds.
Unbelievable.
I couldn't believe it. Okay, we're still, and all of a sudden there's all this excitement. We watched him go past. The flag didn't go down. Okay, well, next lap, But then there's all this excitement, and everybody's like cheering, and what's going on? And we whiz up back to the garage, and the screens are showing us being overtaken. And yeah, it was very exciting for everybody except for us.
Yeah, and of course at that time you would have been on the grid alongside Team Sailor V, which is Robin Welsh's team, who then bought the series outright and started running it. And that's kind of where I then came into the fold. And I've said before about how I ended up getting involved with the C1 series, and then met you guys. So
Yeah,
you obviously had your first taste of
yeah.
of racing in it there, and then you decided to go full bore and buy and run the cars.
Yeah, we went around a couple of cars. But the point is, how we got onto this was about historic racing and the fact it's not policed. And the
Yeah,
Citroen C1 racing, it's well policed.
yeah,
It doesn't matter how many millions you've got or how much you bribe people, you cannot make that. You cannot spend money on that car.
yeah,
There's nothing to do. You just make it shiny, you polish it. That's it. The car has to be more or less standard. There are certain regulatory things you can do to the car for safety and just make it handle a bit better. You end up with a good car, and you end up with an equal car with everybody else because it's well policed. They're weighed every single race. They measure it. They measure. They got special things. They can measure the engine if anybody's cheating. They can look at the telemetry of your aim solo if they want to overlap and see where one person's gaining speed over another. No, that is how motor racing should be, and that's how historic racing should be. But
yeah,
but the organisers are more concerned with the entry fees than they are with and really making money out of it. It's very hard to make
yeah,
money out of motorsport nowadays, and they don't want to be spending their hard-earned entry fees um, on pain of scrutiny to upset everybody and chuck people out.
yeah,
In the Citroen C1s, if you've done something wrong, you're chucked out.
yeah. Absolutely,
In any
it's
of those
zero
classes,
tolerance.
yeah. But these people run the historic meetings. They don't want to have the scrutiny or upsetting anybody,
No,
chucking them out for having an engine which is, 10% bigger than it should be, or for them to have under exhaust blown diffusers and whatever on their Bentleys and whatever. Um, so that's historic racing. I don't like it, um, and I've still got my Allard J2. Um, that's all about the driving, not about the winning. If someone wants to beat me in it, I'll enjoy driving that. I've got my historic touring car, Peugeot. Um,
yep.
I don't know how I can make that quick. I could put a bigger engine in it, I suppose, but I don't think it would. I think that would be very expensive.
Are you
Um,
planning on getting that back out at all for the Super Touring rounds? I know they've got the big festival down at Brands. They're actually at Donington Easter coming up. It's probably a bit short notice for you, but are you planning on getting it out at all this year?
no, at the moment the engine's been rebuilt.
Okay.
I've got my 406 here. I've got Richard Burrows' 405, which is my Total car,
Yeah,
which I've rebuilt for him. Me and Leo, that helps me here. We've rebuilt that, but we're again waiting for the engine from Jeff Page, and is a very capable guy in Essex who builds a lot of top engines out of like Indy cars and old Formula One cars. So he is at the moment, and like the Peugeot T16.
yeah,
And he says, he's rebuilt those lots of times. It's very similar to the touring car engine, actually. So I'm waiting for the engines back from him to put that in there. I'd love the Peugeot to be out at Brands. I'd love my Metro Turbos to be out at Brands as well. I'd love to get my customer Richard Burrows' his 405 out to Brands as well. But in between now and then, we've got the first 2 rounds of the Mazda MX5 Championship. So we've got
Absolutely.
2 cars to finish, and we've got to test those. And then I've got the best part
Well,
of 2 months away doing the Peking to Paris rally in my Sunbeam Tiger.
and what a way to go into that transition, Peking to Paris. So, how's that come about, Patrick? And you're doing it with the other half.
Well, it's the other half's idea. A
Oh,
conversation with someone who had done it, or a friend of ours, Paul Carter, who's done it in a Bentley. He basically told Pam about it. He
okay.
set the scene. He seduced her into wanting to do it, and she's regretted it ever since. But no, so it'll be great fun. Pam and I have worked together. We've built businesses together. We've been through the ups and downs of life together. People say that doing the Peking to Paris rally, 37 days, 14,000 kilometers across some of the most barren parts of the world, in a little 2-seater sports car, is the recipe for divorce. But I would say no. I'm really looking forward to doing it with her. Um, I've not got an ego anymore, I will add. I don't care if we win or lose. It would be nice to win. If she gets the navigation wrong, which she's most worried about, and we end up in Russia or Ukraine or Iraq, Gaza or something like that, it doesn't matter. I'll forgive you, darling. We've had a nice journey. Um, so that's what she's most worried about. Me getting upset with her over getting the navigation wrong. Me driving flat out for 36 days, 36 days, and then we can't find the Arc de Triomphe. Meanwhile, 30 cars overtake you at the last 100 yards of the rally or something. No,
you'd be getting
don't worry,
flashbacks to the C1 race.
don't worry. Yeah, yeah, don't worry about it, dear. No, it's yeah, it sounds quite easy driving what's 9,000 miles, but I
Well,
think it's pretty
it's
rough. We've got fords to go through. We've got to sleep in the open. We've got to find our way. It's a long way across some pretty rough countryside, and we've read a couple of books on it. And one
I've
highlight in the book I read on it, called Paris to Peking, is this woman writes about it. And
okay.
one thing that she says, that every time she comes down to breakfast and greets everybody, there's someone that announces to her that their partner has just flown home because they've fallen out.
Oh God.
Yeah, yeah. And that's on top of the people that are in hospital. Where's so and so? Oh, he's in hospital. He put his Bentley down a ravine or whatever. And so yeah, there are a few pitfalls along the way if one falls into them. But I'm going to just pootle along with
I
my 400
suppose.
horsepower, 400 horsepower Sunbeam Tiger.
Well, I mean, I can't think of any better way to do it than in a beautiful Sunbeam Tiger with all that power under the bonnet. But I suppose half of this whole concept of doing the rally is just the sheer adventure of it and the experiences you're both going to have. So as well as doing the hard driving and the navigational bit, you'll just be taking it all in, I assume.
Yeah, yeah. There's desert and there's a bit more desert, and oh, here comes another sand dune.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
on one of them, one of the books I read on it, the guy was this happened to go north through Russia, but he said the highlight after 4 days driving through Russia of the countryside being the same. They came to a hill. The highlight was they came to a hill. In the UK, we're used to, every 50 miles you come across the North Downs, the South Downs, the Cotswolds, and then a bit further, Lake District. But these big continents, that you can go for thousands of miles and the scenery does not change, you know. And that's one thing I can't get my head around, which will mean that you can drive for days and days and nothing changes. It's just one long, boring, bumpy road with nothing to look at. No shops for the wife. Um, no garages to fill the tank up with. Um, no communication with you. No 4G. Um, mm.
Just you guys and the open road, as it were.
Well, yeah. Hopefully, we'll see a few other competitors. If we don't, then we're probably on the wrong road. Yeah.
Well,
It'd be nice to
Pat,
see a dust cloud in the distance or something, just a reassurance that someone else lives on the planet.
absolutely. Well, Patrick, I think that is a great way to wrap up this podcast, and I sincerely look forward to your adventures. But there is a matter of in a couple of weeks or so, I'll be able to catch up with you at Silverstone face to face and see the family and everyone getting ready for some hard racing in the Mazda MX5 Super Cup.
I'm looking forward to this year. We've rebuilt the car for Amy, and Wilbur's got a new car, and we're still sponsored by Jolly's Ginger Beer and Motul, and we've been doing a bit of testing in a Caterham. I've bought a Caterham C400, which is the Cosworth Engine 400, for
Yep.
Amy to basically, what she says about the Citroen C1s, they were daunting until she drove my historic Mini, which is half the weight and double the power. And
Yeah.
after that, a C1 is a piece of easy,
Yeah. Yeah.
So with the Mazda, that's the quickest thing she's driven. So give her something quicker, like a 250 horsepower Caterham, half the weight of a Mazda, few laps around Brands Hatch, which she did last week, or Monday, and she'll now think the Mazda's slow and therefore abuse it more. But we'll see.
We certainly will do. Well, we'll make sure we catch up with Amy very soon and get her on the podcast to talk about her Super Cup adventures. But for now, Patrick, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us. It's been a great chat.
Rob, thank you very much indeed for inviting me.
Thank you, Patrick.
Bye.
Cheers.